Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It is almost 24 hours since Inter Miami beat the Chicago Fire at Soldier Field 4-1, and that is the main topic of the day. We're going to break it all down. We're going to talk about the goals. We're going to talk about the tactics, the performances, and of course, we're going to give out some awards. As always, I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. How are you feeling tonight, my man?
I'm feeling good. It's Labor Day weekend. I have the Monday off, and what better way to celebrate it than talk about Inter Miami, especially when we win. Guys, I want to apologize. We were going to go live 15 minutes earlier, but Scotty here had a few things to do, and he wasn't able to get on time. So, if anything, blame him for that. But I'm all good, man. How are you?
I'm feeling great with these broad shoulders that can take all of this unfair blame, but you know what? That's okay. Is there anything in Inter Miami's world you want to talk about before we get into this game? I know Messi is coming back, and spoiler, we're going to do our midweek episode on reintegrating Messi. That's going to be the entire topic of that episode, unless there's some crazy breaking news over the next couple of days. And we'll do that probably Wednesday, maybe Thursday. But there's no game next weekend. So we have 13 days off until until Inter Miami's next game. And that's against the Philadelphia Union, which is a game they should win, a game that we should feel comfortable with. We don't have to preview some huge, monumental game that's going to change the season or define this season's legacy or anything like that. So it is a very casual, comfortable time for Inter Miami. And fittingly, there doesn't feel like there's a lot of news other than a few injuries. And because we haven't really addressed them on the podcast, let's just talk about them now. Dos Santos injured. Leo Afonso injured. Lawson Sunderland injured. And then maybe a shorter term injury is this most recent Matías Rojas ankle injury. I do think Rojas will be back in 2 weeks, but the other three feel like they could be a little bit longer term, but also three guys that aren't hugely impactful players. But yeah, those guys feel like they're going to miss more games.
Yeah, and I feel like the injury couldn't have come at a better time for Inter Miami, if that's the way to put that. The 2 week break's really going to help, but I feel like Leo Afonso is out for the season. CJ Dos Santos, I'm not sure what's happening there. Matías Rojas is someone that we definitely would want back before the playoffs. So hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully he can come back very soon, and the 2 weeks is going to be good for the team just to recuperate a little bit. We've had a couple of tough games, got knocked out of the Leagues Cup, and then went straight back to the MLS games. And I think it'll be a good time to just readjust, gather everything, and go for the final stretch of 7 games. So I'm excited for that. I did hear a little birdie say that Messi, when he got back into training on Wednesday, might have rolled his ankle and he left the pitch early from team training and went to train individually. Again, I haven't been following Twitter, so I'm not sure what that was about.
Yeah. Tata said after the game yesterday that Messi probably could have come and played 15 minutes, but they kind of wondered if it was worth him coming on in the second half and doing the road trip and everything, or just giving him that extra 2 weeks off. And they decided it was better to give him 2 weeks off. So I expect him to be fully fit and firing for our next game against Philadelphia. Again, the reintegration of Messi is going to be a huge talking point for us, basically for the next 3 weeks until we get it clicking. And even once he comes back, we're going to talk about if it was exactly what it should have been, and not that Messi would play bad, but did we surround him in the right ways? Did we get the tactics right? All of those types of questions we'll answer moving forward. But for now, I think we should fully expect Messi to be back, a full 2 weeks of training, and then back with the team on that September 14th game against the Philadelphia Union. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the MLS updates. The LA Galaxy just lost this afternoon, and so that game went final maybe half an hour ago. And so Inter Miami is just like creeping towards confirming themselves as the Supporter Shield champions. Cincinnati did win last night. They had a pretty convincing win. So that 8-point gap remains, but one less game for them to try and catch up, which is, they're running out of time and they don't have a ton of points left. And then Columbus, who does have 2 games in hand, and if they won both of those, would be 4 points back of Miami. They have a really tough schedule left. They still play the Red Bulls. They still play Cincinnati, and they still play Inter Miami. They still play Orlando City. And so it is not – and they play Seattle, I think, next weekend or in 2 weeks, I guess. It is not an easy schedule for Columbus. They have 10 games in the same stretch of time that Inter Miami has 7 because they also have that Campeones Cup game against Club America. So it is a packed schedule for the Columbus Crew. I don't see them making a run to catch us. And not only that, but Inter Miami would have to stumble for that to even be possible. And then in the West, the LAFC, I believe, lost last night to Houston 2-0. And then LA Galaxy today lost 2-1 to
St. Louis.
Thank you. I just had it in front of me. St. Louis. And so I feel like –
By the way, who loses to St. Louis? Not into Miami. We don't.
That is true. We did
lose.
Get a draw against them at home.
That's not a loss.
Fair. But anyways, I guess the point is it feels like this race that we were in for so long, Inter Miami has just kept winning as other teams have fallen by the wayside. And it feels like we might kind of cruise to this as we enter the final 7 games. And of course, Inter Miami is adding the best player on their team back to the roster. And so I think we should feel I feel like the Supporters Shield is almost locked up. Probably need, I think, 4 wins. If we get 4 wins, we will feel like that's probably going to be enough. But at that point, go get the points record. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know if you have this off the top of your head, but mathematically, what's the quickest we can get to winning the Supporters Shield? 4 games would be comfortable, but I believe 5 games should be enough out of 7 to win that.
I think I still think it's you need more than 5 wins.
Okay. I think that
just
Columbus
because
Columbus game is going to be really important because that's going to be a 6-point swing, and that would determine a lot.
I don't think it's going to be important by the time we get there. I guess that's my point. Is at this point, if Columbus wins out, like you would still have to get a lot. You still have to win a lot of games, but like if they beat you at that point, they also set the point. Like we'd be talking about both teams setting the points record, which just feels implausible right now. And listen, we've gotten twice against this Columbus Crew team, and I think especially after the second game, my reaction was this is not an unbeatable juggernaut. They are very good, but so is Inter Miami. And again, that October 2nd game is so juicy, so exciting, so fun because if we have Messi back, it's going to be the 2 best teams in the MLS going toe-to-toe. And for the first time, we're going to be at full strength, even though they've been at full strength for the previous 2 meetings. So I'm really excited about that game.
Yeah,
and
same.
I think by the time we get there, the pressure is going to be off in terms of needing to win it for seeding or the Supporters Shield or anything like that. I think we'll have all of that locked up, and it's just a matter of proving we can go beat them, especially on the road, proving that we have the right tactics to match up with them, and then also like chasing the points record, chasing the historical records. You know what I mean?
That's going to be so good. If we go into that game with nothing to win and nothing to lose and just pure football, just to go out and show what we can do against a team as brilliant as Columbus has been these last few years, I think that's the best form of football that you can have. Absolutely no pressure to win or lose, apart from obviously setting the points record. But that's going to be a juicy game if we have everything sealed. And as fans, we can just sit back and enjoy and watch the game properly.
Okay, should we get into this Chicago Fire game?
Yeah, let's do it.
The lineup came out. It was a 3-4-3, which is similar to what we've played. We did get Ian Fran the starting lineup, which we've wanted for a long time. And I have more thoughts on that later on in this podcast. And then the other change was, what was the other change? Julian Gressel goes in, Matthias Rojas comes out with the injury. And so that was the 11, but similar setup, different style, not as heavy on the press. And we will talk about that. But it was a game where Inter Miami went in knowing they were the overwhelming favorites. They were the much better squad. And it has been quite some time since we felt that way. Right? Our last couple games were Columbus, Cincinnati, Tigres. We did have a game against Toronto, but we went down a man in the first half. And then Puebla felt like the last game which was, has been quite some time. So going into this game, I think we both felt good. I think we both predicted a 3-1 victory, and we were ever so close to getting that. That was a popular prediction in the chat for our pregame show. But it didn't start off tremendous. The best minutes of the game for Chicago were the first 5. And I did think it was a little bit of a nervy start. We had a few turnovers that led to a few transition opportunities, maybe 2 or 3. And the best one was an Andrew Gutman shot from inside the box in the 6th minute. But, Yannick Bright was in the right spot as always, and he blocked it. The next big moment in the 10th minute, it was a misstep by Gutman on the other side of the pitch that gave Gressel a brief chance. He tried to toe poke it between the legs of Chris Brady, and Brady was there for the save. But finally, the scoring starts in the 25th minute. Ian Frey steps up sort of as he's approaching the midfield, puts an excellent ball to the foot of Luis Suárez, who just flicks it forward to Diego Gómez, who's overlapping. Suárez peels off into a position, and then he gets the ball back from Diego Gómez, fires, kind of a wonky play, a good save from Chris Brady, but he saves it so well. He parries it so far out of danger that it hits his teammate Tobias Salquist right in the chest, and it bounces right back into the goal. Heartbreaking if you're Chris Brady, but a really fun and MLS-style goal for Inter Miami to break the deadlock.
Yeah, and this is something Luis Suárez has done a few times this season, especially since the restart, since he's come back from Copa America. That given goal with Diego Gómez or whoever's playing the left wing, he's done it really well in linking up the play and getting things moving and finding those spaces, especially when he has a runner in behind accompanying him. And that was beautifully set up. Unfortunate that Suárez couldn't get the finish, because he could have potentially got a hat trick this game, which would have been phenomenal. But a little bit of luck for Inter Miami to get the ball in the back of the net. The commentators didn't know what had happened. I honestly took me a second to realize that the goal has been scored. And, well, it was a really well-worked move from all around. And the finish was a little bit funky, but hey, we take those all day, every day.
Yeah, the ball, I saw Chris Brady save it, and then all of a sudden the ball's in the back of the net, and I was thinking, I don't remember seeing one of our players in that area, but he must have been, and they already had cut, and so I didn't see what happened. It wasn't until the replay that we kind of got a view of what happened. But off the chest of Tobias Salquist, who had a tough game, I think is fair to put it, and this was sort of one for the low light reels. Not his fault, but just one of those moments where everything kind of works against you if you're Chicago. Just 2 minutes later, though, I thought we had our first real chance where it's a corner. Suárez gets to it, puts a header on goal, a really nice header, actually. It just hits the top post. And from this point on, I felt like it was really Inter Miami's game to lose. There was another opportunity in the 34th minute for Diego Gómez. Suárez has like a nice little dummy to set up Diego Gómez, and then Gómez puts it just a bit high. But I mentioned the first 5 or 6 minutes was really positive for Chicago. I thought most of the rest of the first half was all Inter Miami, and most of this game, really. But Inter Miami only goes into half 1-0. This at halftime, I thought back to our last game against Chicago, where we had a 1-0 lead. We felt like we were in complete control. But in the second half, we just weren't putting the proverbial foot on the throat of the opposition. We were letting them hang around. It was, as I mentioned, in the pregame show, it was uncomfortably comfortable. And then all of a sudden Chicago broke through, and then it was very uncomfortable. And then we get the late goal because of Jordi Alba, and we win the game. But it was nervy, and I had that in my mind at halftime. That was not the case. But how did you feel at halftime?
Yeah, a couple of things. So you make a really good point that Inter Miami doesn't necessarily kick into the final gear to finish an opponent off. And we saw that a few times, not just against Chicago, but also against Columbus when we allowed them to come back. Against Cincinnati, of course, we were a man down. But it just felt like the second half of these games, especially recently with the formation that we've been playing, Inter Miami hasn't necessarily been on top and not getting that final, cut to kill the game off. And I was a little bit worried because when the way Chicago started in the first 10, 20 minutes, they were playing really well, especially through their wing and allowing some of their fast-paced attackers to get into good positions and putting in balls into the box. I thought our defense was holding up fantastically. Everyone was well positioned. Busquets had some really good recovery runs. David Martínez was in good positions. The only issue for me was if this was a better opposition, they might have had some clear-cut chances. Because we must remember that Chicago is a team that doesn't necessarily create or score that many goals. So we got away with a little bit of it at the start. But then once we got into the game, it felt like Inter Miami was truly on top. Took us a little bit longer to figure Chicago out and what they were bringing. But we were playing really well, created a few chances. And it was just whether we'd be able to continue that momentum in the second half because we deserved to be ahead at that point.
Yeah, and I want to be clear in the beginning. I actually didn't think Inter Miami started poorly. I did rewatch the game today. Federico Redondo had two sort of sloppy turnovers in the first 5 minutes of the game that led to transition opportunities for Chicago. But aside from those two moments, Inter Miami never felt sloppy or
Yeah, and it wasn't Miami being bad. It was just Chicago was started well. That's it. Like they were well drilled team. They had a plan and they brought it. And Inter Miami weathered the semi-storm, if you want to call it. Were able to figure them out after the first 15 minutes, and we realized I think we were trying to play a little bit too much through the middle at the start, and then we started utilizing our wingers a lot more. I'm not sure if you saw this in the replay, but when I was watching the game first, I thought Jordi Alba coming into the midfield was a help that we received eventually when we were a little bit overloaded in that area. And that was, I think, a good change. But you're right. I don't think Inter Miami was poor by any means. It was just we were going toe-to-toe. It was a good start from both teams.
Anyways, as we mentioned, in the previous couple games, the second halves have been very slow for us. We've exhausted ourselves early with a lot of high pressing. That wasn't the game plan going into this game. And so we had fresh legs going into the second half, and it did not take long. First minute of the second half, Inter Miami puts the game away. A bad touch by Tobias Sahlquist. This one, definitely his fault. Leads to an interception by Diego Gómez, who immediately pushes it forward to Luis Suárez, who catches Chris Brady in sort of poor positioning and then whips it into the near post. I thought it was a really poor play from Chris Brady. He kicked the leg out, and it felt like he thought he was going to get there, and then he just completely whiffed. And it looked like he had enough time and space to actually dive for it. I thought it was a poor play from Chris Brady, but a good finish.
I told you in the reaction that I thought Chris Brady should have done a lot better, and he was beaten on his near post, and it just felt like too easy to have gone in.
Yeah, you were right. It definitely was a poor play from the keeper, but a good finish from Suárez, and he noticed that Brady was, playing a little bit in a poor position, and he took advantage. So that's what you expect from a great player like Luis Suárez. And then in the 65th minute, you get the nail in the coffin, Federico Redondo. And this, I think, went unnoticed if you just watched the game. But he had a really nice catch, turn, and run to kick off this play. And then he ends up getting tackled, and the play stops. But I just wanted to mention that because he had a really nice turn. And then on the ensuing free kick, we kind of go quickly. Busquets puts it wide to Jordi Alba, and then Jordi Alba pushes it centrally. Diego Gómez with a little bit of a stutter step, which throws Carlos Teheran off, and he gets himself off balance and can't make a play. And then it's a very easy, very comfortable tap in for Luis Suárez. 3-0 Inter Miami, 2 goals for Luis Suárez. The MVP race is on, and people are tweeting about it, and everyone's getting excited. And Luis Suárez earns the MVP of the, no spoiler alerts for what happened in this game, but basically it's 3-0 and Inter Miami has won this game.
Yeah, made in Barcelona. I thought that was a really good goal. Very much needed in the grand scheme of things because it allowed us to then be a little bit, take the foot off the gas a little bit. And I thought it was very professionally done throughout the game. It felt like we never really were put under immense pressure by Chicago, especially in that second half. And the goals kept on coming at the right times. Very well constructed third goal. And yeah, no complaints at all. Inter Miami did fantastic.
Yeah, and Gómez, I thought, was really good on that play because he was first to the ball, but he would not have been in a good position to actually put a quality shot on target. It would have been a really nice finish. Not impossible, but it would have been a really nice finish. And so instead, he just dekes it. And that little stutter gets Carlos Tejeda off balance, which, and if that hadn't have happened, Tejeda would have been there to just kick the ball away and clear it. But because he does that, Tejeda gets off balance and he's unable to make a play on the ball. And then Luis Suárez is in a perfect position to just tap it in. So, and like not just a nice play, not just a key, but it was vital to that goal, what Diego Gómez did. And again, he's been amazing. But
yeah, and I just want to add something to that, because as a young player, you often tend to have the tendency to just reach for the ball as soon as it's coming to you, especially when you're in front of the goal. So for him to have the awareness to make that juke and let that dummy go through to Suárez for allowing him to score that goal, his IQ is really, really high on that, and well done to him.
Gómez almost gets one of his own in the 77th minute. It was a bad giveaway from Ariel Lassiter, our old friend, that led to a shot from about 25 yards out. He curls it. It's an amazing shot from distance. He curls it around Chris Brady, but he hits it off the post, and not just off the post, but off the inside of the post. It goes across goal, but out. And Inter Miami doesn't get their fourth. In the 82nd minute, Chicago does get one back. Kellen Acosta whips a ball centrally, and Georgios Koutsias taps it in for the finish. I'm sure we'll talk about that as we get into our awards. But then in the 93rd minute, Inter Miami caps off a great night and ruins our score predictions by getting the fourth. David Martínez lifted it forward to Robert Taylor, who does a little bit of hold-up play, which was nice, taps it back to David Ruiz, and then Ruiz pushes it forward to Campana. Campana, from just outside the box, puts in a great pass to Robert Taylor, who whips it between the legs of Chris Brady, completing the cycle of this game where it started with Julian Gressel trying to tap it between the legs of Chris Brady, and then Robert Taylor actually doing it at the end. Inter Miami wins 4-1. They go to Chicago. They handle business. They beat a team they had no business even, struggling with, and they do it comprehensively. All around great performance. And is that the end of the show, or do we need to break anything else down?
Before we end the show, I just want to talk about that last play where I thought Ruiz had a really good inverted pass, and that's what set off Campana on his way. So well done to Ruiz for that. But overall, very professional performance, man. Not much to say in terms of how he handled business. I thought the team that we put on paper was absolutely on point. I wouldn't have made any changes in terms of the personnel. We were a little bit iffy about the structure and about the formation and how we would play that. But I thought against this Chicago team, we handled it perfectly. It didn't seem to have the same level of dip-off that we had against some of the other teams like Columbus and Cincinnati, where we struggled to keep up and were trying to hit them on the counter. It just felt like cruise control throughout. And honestly, I thought we could have had a couple of more goals. Whether that has to do with Inter Miami being phenomenal, I don't think we were phenomenal. I thought we were very professional, very well drilled, and did exactly what we wanted to do. But Chicago was quite poor, and especially in that second half, I thought once the second goal went in, they weren't necessarily the best at defense at all. Made some poor decisions that led to goals, and all good for Inter Miami on that end.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about Chicago for a minute, because I missed this on the first watch, but in the rewatch, they did talk about how the director of football or sporting director or general manager, whatever title he has, is leaving after the end of this season. They've already sent their star DP, or formerly star DP, out back to Switzerland. That was Xherdan Shaqiri, went back to the Swiss Super League. And so this feels like a team in a very, very poor situation. They don't have a ton of talent, although I will say Hugo Kuipers is really impressive. I thought he was by far their best player. But the rest of this team, man, it does not have a lot to build off of. Brian Gutierrez, a good young player. I don't know how long he's going to be in the MLS. Chris Brady, a good young player. I don't know how long he's going to be in the MLS. And especially Gutierrez, he needs a little bit more talent around him to activate him. He's not quite at the point where he can just lead the team and make other players better. He is a nice young player, but again, he's just not in that situation yet. And then some of the guys they brought in the offseason, Gutman, who we saw for the first time, Kellen Acosta we've seen twice now. They're just not good at this level anymore. They can play, but really they are depth options, and Chicago brought them in to be starters and stars, and it's just not going to work. And so as a result of a whole new project starting, this winter, basically everyone is playing for their job other than Hugo Kuipers. And it's a very interesting position to be in if you're Chicago. And I wouldn't be that excited if I were them, because it doesn't feel like they have a ton to work with.
Did you hear that statistic that the commentator made where apparently since 2017, Chicago hasn't scored 60 goals, and Inter Miami's managed to do it in 27 games? Like, that's wild. That's a wild statistic.
I don't think that's that wild.
The fact that Inter Miami did it in 27 games in one season and they haven't been able to do it in 5 seasons is a little bit.
No. That means they haven't scored 60 goals in a single season since.
No, I think it's the way it sounded was, and I might be completely wrong on this. The way it sounded,
I think you're right. They have 33 goals this year, so certainly
they've scored 60 goals. Like,
yeah.
Because I was watching that and I heard that stat and I was like, that is absolutely wild. Not score 60 goals in 5 years. That makes no sense. So I'm glad.
No, but they haven't made the playoffs in in the COVID year, I guess they did.
Since 2017, yeah.
Since 2017. And I just feel bad for Chicago fans because that is like a long time.
And it's a legacy team as well, man. It's a old school legacy team. So.
Well, I think that's part of the problem, but that's for another podcast. Anyways, anything else on Chicago? Any players you want us to steal, or any players you want us to, you don't want to see again, or you'd hate to see on another team?
I was surprised to see Lassiter on the pitch because
did
they acquire him? Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't follow that. So I was very surprised to see him on the pitch. I was like, we just saw you against a different team. But no, man, I think overall it was you could see the gulf in quality, and Inter Miami was vastly superior in terms of its quality. I thought they had some really good attacking players with Brian Gutierrez, Kuipers, you mentioned already. Haile Selassie is also quite fast, but they're not particularly goal threatening in any way. So none that gave us a trouble. And I'm not sure if we're going to see Chicago again, maybe in the playoffs. But
no, we're not going to see Chicago again. I think they're probably the favorites to be last in the East this year. I know Nashville's been really bad, but I think there's a really good chance the Chicago team finishes in last place. I will say, this came to me this morning. Last year around this time, we went to Soldier Field, and it was after we had acquired Messi. It was after we had the League Cup, after we went out and beat LAFC on the road, beat Cincinnati in the semifinal of the Open Cup. Like, we were rolling, and then Messi got hurt on international duty, and we were still trying to survive and get enough points so that we could make a playoff push. Right? We were still technically alive, and that game, when we lost it at Chicago, felt like at least to me, the nail in the coffin for our chances. I know we weren't mathematically eliminated yet, but it was this same team. There's a lot of different players, but it was Inter Miami without Messi a year ago, going on the road to Chicago, trying to win to keep their playoff chances alive, and they got blown out 4-1. And so I thought it was a sort of nice poetic comparison. Here we are a year later, still Inter Miami, still without Messi, where for so long there was these questions of could we win without him. Now we are dominating without him, and we finish that off, cap it off with a 4-1 reversing of what happened last year around this time. So there was some poetry in that, I thought, and worth mentioning, I think.
Yeah, and you know what? If nothing comes of the season, at least we know that this Inter Miami team is not just Lionel Messi. We've done superbly without him. Of course, once he comes in, we're going to be on a completely different level. But I'm just glad that we were able to perform and get the results without having Lionel Messi in the team, because it gave us a chance to prove to everybody that this team is a lot more, and our youngsters really do have a lot of potential. So at least that's a good positive thing to carry with us.
For those that don't remember, the last 2 games we had with Messi were a 3-1 loss to Atlanta and a 3-3 draw against St. Louis, both of those games at home. And so we're going into the Copa America in poor form and not feeling great about the team. And there was a lot of comments made by a lot of commentators about how this team was going to really struggle over the next 6 weeks of the Copa America without Suárez and Messi. And yet here we are on the verge of getting Messi back, and I think we're doing just fine. Let's talk about this formation. We mentioned it in the pregame show. We mentioned it in the postgame show. And for those of you that only listen to this podcast on your podcast feed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. I encourage you to go check those out. We do a 1 hour pregame show in the hour before kickoff, and we do sort of a 20-30 minute instant reaction that's more emotional, less analytical right after the game. But those are only on YouTube. So if that's something you're interested in, I encourage you to check it out. This 3-4-3 formation, it requires us to play through the wings. There's not a lot of buildup through the middle. As you mentioned earlier, we didn't ever feel like, oh, maybe this was off camera, I apologize, but it never felt like we were suffocating the game away with possession. The final possession numbers were 50-50. And that was because we weren't set up to control the ball, to dominate possession. And it doesn't feel like something we're going to see moving forward. I don't think.
I don't know, man. I'm a bit worried because I feel like this Inter Miami's team's mark was trying to suffocate the teams by playing good tiki-taka football, holding possession. And that's why we were so frustrated when players like Sergio Busquets would give the ball away. I think we're going to go back to the 4-3-3 once Messi comes back. But as we play along, the more we play against some of these teams, I thought Chicago would have been the perfect game to get back to that 4-3-3 formation. But it seems like Tata Martino really likes this 3-4-3, and we've sort of given up that concept of controlling the midfield, and we tend to just now play through the wings and play not exactly counter-attack football, but more so on transitions and free-flowing rather than controlling the ball and building the play up. So it's an interesting switch up. I love to get into the psychology of Tata Martino, which we've talked about a fair few times here. But what I'll be looking out for once Messi comes back is which formation he immediately goes to, because that would indicate that's his preferred formation.
So my brain sometimes does this thing where the thing I want to happen, I start justifying ways of like why it's going to happen. And especially in soccer, right? And so this thing I want to see from Tata Martino, I start looking for reasons to justify why that happened, or why this happened, or why we haven't gotten there yet, or whatever. And I had one of those this morning. And so I preference that by saying, I may be seeing things that aren't there. I may be deluded, and I am certainly crazy. But
yes, and maybe.
But here was my thought process on this. They stuck with this formation, not quite as high pressing, but a similar style to what we've seen of late. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe Tata, who wants to win every game because we want to win the Supporters' Shield, we want to get first in the East, we want to clinch that CONCACAF Champions Cup spot in the regular season, right? Our next opportunity to do that is by winning the Supporters' Shield. So he needs to go get 3 points. He has a much better team. Stick with what's been working now for this one last game, because we know we're about to have 2 weeks to work on whatever idea he has that includes Messi. And so don't try and implement something on Thursday, the day that Messi came back, to try and build something that involves Messi if you're not even sure Messi's going to play. And they're probably having these conversations about Messi probably not playing this weekend. And so just stick to what has been working. And now you get 2 weeks to go back to this 4-3-3 that I want to see. Now, does that mean Ian Frey's going to start right back? In my head, it does, but not in reality. But I do think we're going to go back to the 4-3-3, and I do hope it has Yannick Bright in the midfield. We won't have Toto Aviles for the next game, so I expect Busquets to partner with David Martínez. But I think we're going to go back to exactly what we were pre-Messi, just with Yannick Bright in the midfield to help us in defensive transitions. We have better players at center back to build out of the back. We have fullbacks, especially Jordi Alba, that are going to get higher up the pitch. And then we're just going to dominate the ball because we want to get Messi as many touches high up the field as possible, because that's a beautiful recipe for success.
See, in an ideal world, that would be exactly how I'd be thinking as well. And that's why I said I do think we'd eventually go back to the 4-3-3, because that's how you get the best out of this team. Playing through the wings takes away some of Messi's most critical qualities, which is taking players on and creating space by attracting loads of players in the midfield towards him and then passing the ball off to players who are then free. So when we're not able to play through the middle, if Messi's on the pitch, then we're basically nullifying some of the qualities that he has. Can he play in a back three? 100%. You have to find a way to do that, but I truly believe so. But I do think the that this team has to offer is in a 4-3-3 formation. Now, whether that's at the expense of some of the preferred players like Yannick Bright, perhaps. Unfortunately, we don't live in a ideal world. We live in Tata's world, and Tata Martino does what Tata Martino does. And I like what Skrilla said here, which is since day one, Tata wants to play that back three, and we saw that in the preseason. The reason he gave that up is because it just wasn't working with someone like Gressel in the right wing back spot, and we weren't able to get the best out of it. Now I feel like, and I fear that he's found an excuse to use that, and he might try to use it with Messi on the pitch. Again, a lot of conjecture, a lot of questions, something that we're going to tackle in the midweek episode as well and talk in more depth. But this 3-4-3 is fine. It works really well against certain oppositions. This style particularly, I think, without that high press intensity style, where we sort of find the middle ground, where we press a little bit at the right moments and then try and create in transitions, is well suited to this team.
It's a transition style for sure, though, right?
Yeah.
We never really sat on the ball and suffocated the game away, even when we went up 3-0. I noticed, and this is not being critical, it's just something that I think is interesting looking back in retrospect. But in the 70th minute or so, after we had gone up 3-0, we put on Kramaski, we put on David Ruiz, and we sat back in a 5-4-1. But we left Suárez on, even though I understand he was on 2 goals and he could have gotten a hat trick, but we left Suárez on, even though we were sitting in a very, very deep formation where Suárez is once again just doing dirty work to try and hold up the ball, and is not particularly effective. It's something we've talked about over the last week, how we don't love that. And so I'm curious, even at that point, when Chicago is emotionally gutted, they're not in this game, they know they're not going to win, you make substitutions that give you more midfielders, but not in a way that's going to give you better possession. I'm just curious about that. But again, that's why I'm in my head, I'm like, that's what we're going to work on over the next 2 weeks.
It's not even the personnel as such. I think we can control a game with this personnel. Some of the players that we have on the ball are actually, they play really well with the ball. David Martínez plays really well with the ball. Sergio Busquets is an absolute master at it. Redondo can play with the ball well. We've got Jordi Alba, the same, good with the ball in his feet. Ian Frey was able to do that. But when you look at the way the team is playing and the way it's set up, the instructions are very clear.
That's what I
mean. Move the ball very quickly. So as soon as you have the ball in your feet, 2 touches and then pass it on. You saw a couple of times Yannick Bright had some really good line-breaking passes, but he didn't take time on the ball. Redondo didn't take time on the ball. They would pass it either back to Sergio Busquets to recycle the ball or immediately forward. So it's definitely an instruction where we're trying to move the ball a lot quicker and get it from the back to the front very quickly. And listen, there are more than one ways to control a game of football. One of them is the possession style football that we've seen pre-Messi, when Messi was actually playing with Inter Miami initially in the first phase. Yesterday also, I think we controlled the game just in a different sense. And I'm not sure what the best style is going to be once Messi comes back. My intuition says possession style football is the best way to go once he's back. But again, lots of questions to answer.
Yeah, there was another thing I wanted to come back to that we had talked about last game, and that was the pressing, because it felt like 3 or 4 games in a row where we pressed really high, really hard for 20 minutes in order to create an early lead, and then we ran out of energy, ran out of gas, and sat back and just survived the last hour, 70 minutes of the game. And on a number of occasions it worked, against Toronto, against Cincinnati last week, but on a number of occasions it didn't work, and we gave up the go-ahead goal late, thinking about the Tigres game, thinking about the Columbus Crew game, where at that point, when we finally broke and gave up the lead, we didn't have the energy, the style, or the personnel on the pitch in order to make a real comeback. So that was something I was very, like, it worked. It can work, and it worked against Cincinnati, but it was something I didn't want to see every game moving forward. We didn't see it in this game, and as a result, we saw a consistent scoring threat throughout the game. And so I did want to give Tata some credit, or some praise for having the wherewithal to listen to our podcast and come up and agree with our ideas. But more seriously, I appreciated that that isn't just going to be our default style from now on, because as we're talking about this formation, as we're talking about reintegrating Messi, it is a matter of, okay, what are we building into so that we're 100% when the playoffs come? And Tata not fully forcing us to press for 20 minutes and then die was a positive step, I thought.
Yeah, and there was a stark difference between how we played against Columbus and Cincinnati versus how we played against Chicago. I think yesterday we were set up in really good positions. The compactness was quite visible, especially when we were off the ball. We didn't necessarily go all the way high up. The line wasn't that high either, but we were in positions to choke some of Chicago's passing lanes. At the start, they were using the flanks really well to get in behind us. We cut that out as the game progressed, and a couple of the goals that came were through us not pressing high per se, but having a compact defensive structure, being in the right positions, and everyone doing their job well in a good medium to high press block. Case in point, Diego Gómez getting that turnover, passing the ball off to Suárez, which led to the second goal. Similarly, Diego Gómez had a couple of really good turnovers in the middle. So I think that's a really good strategy to go by, especially against some of these lesser teams where they tend to make the mistakes even when they have a little bit of pressure or when they don't necessarily get the passing options. So cutting off the passing lanes was very important yesterday, and I like that a lot more than the high intense press.
That does lead me to my next point, though. And this is something that I think a lot of people, especially if they're kind of new to MLS, don't quite understand, because in so many leagues around the world, the goal is to win the league by accumulating the most points. And so every game you have to win in a way that gets you 3 points. And so it's very easy to say, just stick with the hot hand, or just stick with the style that's working, or it doesn't matter if it's ugly or pretty or what, just get 3 points. But that's not the MLS. The goal of the MLS is to win the MLS Cup. And that means you have to build your team so that it's firing fully once the playoffs start. You want to be in a great mindset. You want to know who your who your 11 are, who your subs are, what situations you go to what. And you want everyone to be playing in a style and a setup that they're comfortable and familiar with, so that, again, you're firing at 100% once those games, the do or die, go home, win or go home games start. And so the next 7 games, it's not about just getting 3 points. I know we want to win the Supporter Shield. I know we want to break the points record or get win the East, get home field advantage. Like, I know all those things are important to in a sense, but also you have to continue to try the things that you might want to do in the playoffs, so that Ian Frey at right back is better than Cello Weekend, or vice versa. Or if you're going to play Cello Weekend, he needs to sit back more, or no, he can play more advanced. But the point of these types of games, especially when you have this huge talent advantage, is not, especially at this point where Inter Miami is already in the playoffs, they're already in a comfortable position. You have to continue to press to build your team to 100% of its talent, not just win and get 3 points. And so when we talk about things like, pressing hard in this game for 20 minutes or not pressing, for example, in this game against Chicago, like, the reason those conversations are important is because you want to know what is best for your team come the playoffs. And so, because again, if this was the Premier League or La Liga or the Bundesliga, and you're just trying to win the league and get the most points, then you can switch those strategies up whenever you want, or whenever it's most appropriate, depending on the competition. But in the MLS, it's not just about winning these games. It's about making sure you know exactly what your best team is and how your best team plays best, so that when you get to the playoffs, you are ready to dominate.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I don't think I can put it any better, but at the end of the day, we've seen Tata Martino will always switch around, try new things. And it just feels like at this point, you and I, maybe some of the fans, know what the best 11 is, know what the best formation might be. But I wouldn't necessarily blame him either, in the sense that there's still a few variables that need to be considered, with injured players coming back, Messi coming back in. So I think the next 7 games is going to be super crucial, and I'm not mad that we haven't yet set the style of play.
And to me, it's the next 4. It's the next 4 games, because the 5th game is that Columbus Crew game on the road, and this is like This is the testing ground, right? Get yourself in the optimal position. Get your best 11 that you think is your best 11 in the play style that you think best suits you. So whether that's a right back like Ian Frey that plays high up the pitch and can combine with Messi or overlap with them, like you have to try that out so that when you get to that Columbus Crew game on October 2nd, you can go with what your best lineup is, your best formation, your best style to check to see if it actually works against the best competition. Because we could run what we did last night against the Philadelphia Union. We're going to get 3 points, but we're not going to learn if that's the best style, unless Tata is convinced that's the best style. I'm not, but of course I'm not the coach. So,
yeah. Hey, maybe soon, man.
Yeah. Anything else, or should we get to awards?
I think we're ready for awards, man. I told you I have some spicy awards, so.
Okay, well, let's see if you can make my tongue burn. Guys, on this show, we give out 6 awards: the man of the match for Inter Miami, a heron that flew north, and 2 individual awards each. Since I went first last time, Saur, it is your turn to give out the man of the match and enlighten all of us. Who gets the Drive Pink Dialogues man of the match?
I mean, it'd be a absolute crime not to give it to the person who scored 2 goals and has set himself in motion for the Golden Boot for league play, and that is none other than Luis Suárez. Man, he's hitting form at the perfect time, and we had a few questions about him earlier a couple of weeks ago where it seemed like he wasn't, back at his best, but he was still scoring goals. And in the last couple of games, he's just picked that up. 2 very good goals. The first goal as well, I thought he got a little bit unlucky not to score that. Chris Brady had a fantastic save, and it went in eventually, but he created that goal with his movement and with the way he positioned his body and feinted. Brilliantly done. Second goal, fantastic finish. And third goal, just a poacher's goal all around. So I think there were a couple of candidates for the man of the match, but Suárez was definitely top of them with his 2 goals, taking Inter Miami to another victory and potentially securing his place in the Golden Boot race for the next 7 games.
Yeah, I thought, I rewatched it, and I thought he had like 2 or 3 touches in the first 15 minutes that I think he would have been like, did that come off of my foot? Like, how did that happen? But then he was phenomenal for the last 65 minutes or however long he was in. Got 2 goals, could have had a hat trick, could have had a third. He had that header in the first half that could have been a goal. He hits the post. He had another opportunity in the second half.
The keeper as well at one point.
Yeah, well, that actually turned into the third goal because it got called back because that's when Redondo got fouled, and then we ended up scoring. So he did get a goal like 30 seconds later, but
it was all planned.
Yeah, he had another opportunity in the second half after he had already scored the second goal. He just couldn't put it on frame. I thought Chris Brady did a good job of sort of shielding and making himself big. But yeah, really good performance. Really nice touches. He's got 16 goals on the season now, which is tied for second in the league, but he has 0 penalty goals. All the other players on the list have, I think it's 2, 5, and 7 penalty goals. So in terms of non-penalty goals, he has the most, and he's played in the fewest games. He is averaging in the MLS 1 goal per 90 minutes. And he's got another like 6 assists on top of that, something like that. So he's been phenomenal. And maybe this is where we should bring in the MLS MVP conversation, because that was the big shout from yesterday's game. Is now that he's won back-to-back, he's scored 4 goals in the last 2 games. He has put himself squarely in the MVP race. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I am surprised that so many people have jumped on this bandwagon.
No, I'm not surprised by any means. I think this was bound to happen when he got a good chunk of games under his belt. When he first came on, he started off absolutely hot and firing on all cylinders. Then the break came in with Copa America, and it allowed some of his other competitors to catch up. And now that he's back again with no more breaks in between, it feels like he's getting hot very quickly, man. And I'll be honest, I think that little break in between allowed some of his competitors to get ahead, but he was just saying, you know what, you take a little bit of 2 extra steps, I'm still going to catch you up and I'm going to beat you. And I won't be surprised over the next 7 games if once Messi comes back, he just absolutely blows everyone out of the water.
Can I tell you a stat that I think might change the nature of this conversation?
Yep.
Luis Suárez in the MLS this year, 16 goals, 5 assists, 21 goal contributions. How many goal contributions do you think Messi has right now?
I know he has about 13 assists.
He's got 9 assists and 12 goals. He's got the same number. He has the same number of goal contributions as Luis Suárez. And so forgive me for thinking that the minute Messi steps back onto the field, he's going to win the Golden Boot, which he's still in it, by the way. He's got 12 goals. The current is 17 is the number. And he now only has to beat the rest of the competition by 5 goals. He's going to get assists. Almost every Luis Suárez goal is probably going to have at least half an assist for Lionel Messi. I actually think at this point, Lionel Messi might be the more likely to win the MLS MVP. Luis Suárez has only played 20 games this year. I'm sorry, he's played 20. Lionel Messi's only played 12. And yet, if Messi does what he did for the first 12 in the next 7, he's going to finish with another 2 goal contributions per game. He's going to finish with 35 goal contributions, and that's going to blow out everyone else in the league. I actually think Messi is still the more likely to win the MLS MVP.
You know what, man? I would not call you a madman for saying that. That is a very good shout.
One of the things that also matters is like the impression you have when you vote. So for the voters. And right now, people have a really good impression of Luis Suárez. But again, there's that October 2nd game that's right before voting where Lionel Messi is going to go to Columbus and have a chance to put on a show. I still think Lionel Messi has the best chance to win the MLS MVP. So that's why I'm surprised. I get it. It's fresh and new. And Luis Suárez is right there and has a chance to win the Golden Boot, but we'll see. And again, in Luis Suárez's favor, he's going to get more opportunities. I think his goal scoring pace is going to improve when he has Messi to feed him. But I don't know. I feel like we're forgetting about Lionel Messi in this race, and I don't know if we should be. Anything else on Suárez?
Give me the heron who flew north.
Okay, guys. We, on this episode, on this show, give out a heron that flew north every game. For those that don't know, Florida herons, they don't fly north during the winter. They don't fly anywhere during the winter. And so if you find one flying north, you're finding one doing the wrong thing. And so it is our most critical player award. But for this game, I thought it was very difficult. I thought every single player that touched the pitch had a quality game. Even the substitutes, Benjamin Cremaschi was running, David Ruiz set up the last goal. Campana got an assist on the last goal, and Robert Taylor finished the last goal. So I thought all 15 players that saw the field for Inter Miami had a quality game. And so I feel bad giving this out. But I am going to give it to Ian Frey because he had I thought he had a good game. I really did. But I have to give it to someone. And there were 2 moments in this game that I felt he was the one that ended up earning it because of these 2 moments. In the 19th minute, he was almost caught sleeping by Hugo Kuipers. There was a cross from Chris Mueller who put a ball in. Kuipers cut in front of Ian Frey, and he didn't track him particularly well. If it was a perfect cross, it would have been a goal in the first half, and that could have changed the game. And then on the last goal, or on the Chicago goal, I did think Ian Frey was probably most at fault. Kind of a tough situation because the player's moving in from one player's zone to the next player's zone. But and the ball, in terms of the incoming pass, just went through the legs of David Martínez, which is tough. So I give Ian Frey the most blame for that, but just a tough situation. And then the other reason I'm giving it to him is because I have a conversation I want to have about Ian Frey that I would have done in an award, so I figured I might as well give him this. But I'm sorry, Ian, you're getting this week's Heron That Flew North.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough one, especially when the team wins 4-1. But I feel like Ian Frey would have definitely been up there in terms of contenders for players who didn't perform particularly as well as the rest of them. I agree with you. He had a yellow card as well. He had a bit of a part to play in the goal. I don't think he was prolific by any means, but it's a little bit harsh because I don't think he had a bad game by any means.
No, he was good. He was good. He had a good game.
There were a couple
but someone's got to win it.
there was one really good tackle that he made in the box, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, that's a spicy tackle, perfectly timed."
That was in the 21st minute on Brian Gutierrez.
Yeah. And to defend Ian Frey a little bit, I don't think that right side was average at worst for the entire game. So when I say the right side, I mean Cello, Frey, and Gressel. If I would have picked another one, maybe if not Ian Frey, I would have maybe gone for Gressel or Cello Wigan. So for me, I don't think that right side was as prolific as the left side. And yeah, we had to give it to somebody. I thought Ian Frey did fine in that right centre back role. I think you switch up Cello Wigan and Ian Frey, and that's a phenomenal back line. And that can get you so much in terms of output from that right side of the pitch. And it's so weird that all it takes is that one switch. So I would love to see Ian Frey play as right back or right wing back, because his game is a lot more suited to playing in that role than Cello Wigan's is. And I think it would allow both of them to thrive a lot more.
I do want to have a conversation about Ian Frey, because as we're talking about building into the playoffs, we have 7 games left. And it's no longer about giving guys minutes to develop. I don't think we're at that point in the season anymore. And I think that's where Ian Frey is as a center back. I don't think that's where Ian Frey is as a right back. And I know Tata's mentioned he wants to make sure Ian Frey is a center back. And ultimately, long term, Ian Frey has a much higher ceiling as a center back because he's so incredible on the ball that he has tools that most center backs just don't have. But I want to remind you, even though he is 22, I believe yesterday was his birthday. Yeah, he just turned 22. He's only played 1,231 professional minutes, including last night, which is not a lot. For reference, Kramaski, Noah Allen, David Ruiz are all like around 3,000, and they made their debuts way after Ian Frey. Playing as a center back requires you to get minutes as a center back, because you see things, you react to things, you learn from them, you watch the film. It is the hardest outfield position to play from a mental perspective. Maybe DM is right there, but it just takes so much experience to really master the craft of playing center back. And Ian Frey hasn't mastered that yet. And that's not a criticism of him. Again, I didn't think he played bad. And you can see that the tools are like, you can drool over the tools because they're so impressive. But there are still moments where he doesn't necessarily track the runner. There are still moments, and even when you watch him for the B team, there are moments when he catches himself out of position and he lets up an opportunity. And I don't know if there's a bigger Ian Frey fan than me, but for this season, as we're approaching the playoffs, as we're trying to get the best 11 on the pitch, I want him to be a right back, not a center back. He can fill in at center back if you have injuries or whatever, but like, to me, he's beyond. He's like, give me Aviles, give me Busquets, give me David Martínez ahead of Ian Frey at center back. But don't give me anyone ahead of Ian Frey at right back because of what he can do going forward. And again, at right back, you can explore all of the talent and fearlessness and ability to go forward without quite so much defensive responsibility where you have to be perfect for 100% of the game, or else you could be the reason your team loses the game. There's not quite that pressure defensively for a right back, but also it allows him to express himself going forward. So I think right now for this season, I want to see him as a right back, not as a center back. And I know everyone was excited to see him in the starting lineup last night, but I'm going to be excited when I see him as a right back or a right wing back, because less defensive responsibility, which is fine because he's a young player, and more ability to get forward and exploit opposition defenses that are not prepared for the X factor that Ian Frey is. So I had to say that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And Tony makes a point about how Cello is like Noah Allen sized and not sure if he's suited to playing right centre back. And that's my point. Aviles is yet to come back. So I wouldn't even have Cello in the starting 11 if it were up to me. But again, I think I completely agree with you on this, that Ian Frey's best position at this point in time is right back. And he's just got such important tools that allow us to make the most of that situation, whether it's his ball carrying, whether it's his press resistance, whether it's his passing as well. And I just feel like that gets a little bit lost when he's playing in the right centre back role, because he's obviously a lot more conscious about the positioning, about where he needs to be, and he needs minutes in that role. And yeah, I agree with you.
And
Ian Frey is best suited to right back right now.
it's the same thing with Toto Aviles, right? We talk about it every month. He becomes a better defender, and yes, he still has some mental or maybe discipline problems, or not
Major
problems, but
things.
concerns, right? He does accumulate a lot of yellow cards, but he, as a defender, as a one-on-one defender, as playing in space, as communicating with his partner or partners, he's getting better month after month after month. And Ian Frey will do the same thing once he starts playing every single week. But center back is just so hard in those mental aspects of the game. And I don't think we should be as excited about Ian Frey starting at center back as we should about him starting at right back, because you have to worry more about him giving up that one moment, which we did see last night. In fact, I thought there was 2 moments where we saw it. And on the other hand, as a center back, he doesn't get to express himself going forward quite as much. So I don't think we should just say Ian Frey should start. It should be Ian Frey should start as a right back.
Yep. Time for my first award.
Yes, let's hear it. And I was promised spiciness, so let's see what you got.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying spicy, but I tried to be a little bit creative today. So both my awards today are chess themed, for listeners who might be avidly interested in chess. For those who are familiar with chess, I bring to you Saur's chess themed awards for today. And the first one I have is called the Bishop's Ordinance Award.
Well, that award is obviously going to David Martínez.
Ooh. Well, no, not really. But what's your thinking behind that?
I have no idea.
So talk to me, Scotty, right? You've played chess before. What does a bishop do?
It moves diagonally.
And in chess vernacular, we call a bishop being a sniper because he can see across the diagonal, right? He can move as many places across the diagonal as possible. And it's the furthest moving piece other than the queen, of course. And here in Inter Miami's backline, we have a sniper who's also not just a bishop in the chess sense, but seems to be becoming a bishop in the religious sense as well, because of how godly he is. And that is none other than Sergio Busquets. For me, the best player on the pitch across the 90 minutes, absolutely phenomenal from start to end. I don't think he put a single foot wrong. He was everywhere on that pitch yesterday, defending, distributing, creating, making Inter Miami flow. And I just feel like he's evolved into a player that should now be considered a centre back and not a central midfielder. But my goodness, I thought he had a phenomenal performance yesterday. And if not for Luis Suarez's 2 goals, I would have 100% given him the man of the match.
He had a number of occasions where he was sprinting and keeping up or beating very fast players, particularly one in the 32nd minute where it looked like Haile Selassie was just going to blow past him, and he did no such thing. Busquets kept up with him and then bodied off the ball and then just swiped it like it was, candy from a baby type of thing. It was so beautiful. He did that on 3 occasions. I think that was the only one I wrote down, but I agree with you, man. Not only is he all the things we already knew he was, but he's developing into like even a one-on-one central defender. And he showed it a number of times last night. I thought we saw him sprint faster in last night's game than we have at any point since he arrived in Inter Miami. I thought that was crazy. He was awesome last night. Like you said, he sprays it around on the set piece to get that second goal. No, the third goal. It was, just being smart, understanding his teammates, getting out there quickly when the defense is unprepared. He is so smart. He is so good on the ball. He is also becoming really good as a central defender. And I will say, I told you for the last 2 months that this guy might just fit into our team better as a center back, because not only can he handle it with class and promise and talent, But it also allows us to do some different things in the midfield, which was one of our biggest problems early in the season. Now, I am starting to come around to the idea that I want a midfield of Busquets, Bright, and Diego Gómez. So I might be the one starting to put him back in the midfield.
I feel like you're more confused than Tata Martino at this point in time.
But he's an excellent center back, dude. He's an excellent center back.
Dude, I think, going back to my theme of the award, the bishop has ordained it that Sergio Busquets is today a center back, and that's it. No more questions.
You know what? You got me, because the bishop's ordinance, I was just thinking chess, and I didn't think of the religious aspect. So I was never going to get that one. But that's probably what makes it a good award.
I've got another good one coming in. But first,
hopefully I don't steal it. But going back to Busquets, are you coming around to the idea that he should be a center back for this team this season? Not talking about next year, not talking about.
I'll be honest, I was always a lot more skeptical compared to you about Busquets' position as a center back. And it didn't have anything to do with him as a player per se, but it had more to do with what I think he offers to the midfield. I still think he's the best midfielder that Inter Miami has. But he's just been so good as a center back, like especially in the last few games. It's scary how good he's become as a center back, and I would say he's probably one of our best center backs right now. So, given how well he's performing, and it seems like he's hitting his peak physical condition very quickly, he worked really well with David Martínez. I think they've paired up 3 times now, and they've looked really good together every single time they've stepped out on the pitch. So, I am not averse to having Busquets in the centre-back role anymore. I think that's a very, very good shout that you recognize very quickly, and it took me a while to come around to it.
Tony in the chat says that he agrees as long as he has 2 center-backs next to him, 2 fast center-backs next to him. I will tell you, I want to see Busquets in a partnership with David Martínez next to him. And again, we've this episode talked about building towards the perfect roster for the playoffs. But one thing I want to see this regular season is a back 4 with Alba and Ian Frey at the fullbacks, and then David Martínez and Busquets as a central midfield partnership with Yannick Bright in front of them to protect them, because Busquets isn't a great athlete, and you don't want him defending one-on-one transitions a lot. Although, again, last night he did it 3 different times, and it was really impressive. But you put Yannick Bright in front of him, you protect them a lot. And then having the 2 fullbacks be able to bomb forward, you start dominating possession like we saw with Messi on the field. You have 2 fullbacks that are good, high up the pitch, comfortable, and can be scoring threats from the outside, can cross it, can cut in, can interchange. And then have Messi and Suárez as the focal point centrally. Again, with Yannick Bright, Diego Gómez, maybe Kremaski, so you have a ton of athleticism and legs in the midfield. You are talking about something really, really special. And if we don't get that this year, at some point, I'm going to be so frustrated. Because in my head, that's the best lineup, or at least I think it's the best lineup, and I really, really want to see it. And again, in that formation, you now have 2 guys on the back line that can spray it anywhere on the field because, as you said, other than the Queens, they have the best vision and the best maneuverability, and they are snipers.
Yep.
I'm giving the pencils down award.
Ooh. Okay, so this is obviously, you picked up your pencil to draw up a tactical plan, right? And once the tactical plan has come to fruition, you can put your pencils down, because now it's proven that you no longer need to prepare those tactics, because for the final time, you understand where that player is going to play. For me, that award goes to David Martínez, because he is an out-and-out centre-back who's always going to be the first player on the team sheet, and you don't even need to pick up the pencil to be able to say that David Martínez is going to be my starting centre-back.
It is David Martínez, not for whatever mumbo jumbo you just said, but
you also stole my award, so now I'm very disappointed.
I had a feeling that might happen, and so I am sorry.
I do have a third award, so it's fine.
Here's the thing: when you're in school, you have a time limit on the tests you can take. And you're on your piece of paper and you're writing your answers, and then the teacher says pencils down at the end of the test. And I think we've now gotten to the end of the test of David Martínez, and he passed it with flying colors. He was not a guy that played a ton of soccer for 18 months because of injuries and because because of those injuries, he kind of fell out of favor at River Plate. And so we weren't 100% sure we were going to get a real soccer player. Like, there was a chance he was going to come in and he was going to be so stale and he wasn't going to be able to do it anymore. And he was going to be unathletic and injury prone and all these things. But now it's been 5 games. I've seen what I've needed to see. I mean, you could see from game 1, the tools, right? But now there's no injury concern as far as I'm concerned. He did get 1 red card, but and he did get a yellow card that I could criticize him for in this game. But he's passed the test. It wasn't like the first impression. It wasn't, 1 or 2 games. He has now given me enough of a sample size for me to say, absolutely, I'm ready to sign him next summer on a permanent. He's so good from that left side. And I love me a left-sided center back that can really distribute and has the athletic tools to cover defensively. So the test has been passed and the pencils are now down. Time's up and we get an A for David Martínez. Great signing.
Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant game from him as well. Apart from that yellow card, I think he was just so stout and so solid in defense. Just anything that comes his way. I think there was this one moment where David Martínez was one-on-one with a Chicago player and he just won the ball. If that Chicago player went past him, that would have been a clear on goal. But he just didn't let them pass. And it just feels like finally we have a strong, solid centre-back who's also good with the ball. And he seems to have all the tools that you need from a left-sided centre-back. And it's just ironic that at this point in time, he's not the best centre-back in the club because Sergio Busquets is playing that role so well. So it's really ironic, but I think he's toe-to-toe, man. Their partnership looks really, really solid. He's playing really well. And the award I had for him was called the Rook's Reprieve. Rook, because I feel like he's built like an absolute castle and he's this massive tank of a man who can just, he's strong, physical. And then Reprieve, because I feel like he's definitely brought some reprieve to our backline and helped us get over our defensive woes.
Yeah, he is. I thought he was right up there with Busquets as the best player for over 90 minutes. Those 2 plus Suárez were, I think, the 3 obvious standouts in terms of performances. He was phenomenal last night. Just such a great player. And you mentioned over the last couple of weeks that you really wanted to see this partnership build between Toto Aviles and David Martínez as we get towards the regular season's ending and we get into the playoffs and all these things we talked about today. But are you now just ready to see the partnership and chemistry build between Martínez and Busquets instead?
Honestly, they play like this every single game. I don't even think they need to build that chemistry. They just have it. They seem so on it. It was very well done from them. I thought a few times we got bypassed, especially in that first 10 minutes where they started creating from that flanks. And we were our defense was in the right spot, in the right area, blocking those incoming cutbacks. And it just didn't feel like we were under pressure at all throughout the game. It's just really, really good all around. And then the distribution speaks for itself. We've been playing really well. And I think that goes back to the point of playing fast. As soon as the ball comes in your feet, take 2 touches and just distribute it. And he's been very good at that. So overall, I think he's a really, really good good player.
Yeah, Ash in the chat says you have to give a lot of credit to Henderson and Tata for finding perfect scheme fits among other teams' trash. Listen, I think it's just Tata. Like, I think Chris Henderson is an incredible GM, and I'm really happy we have him. But these South American players that we're getting from Paraguay and Argentina and those leagues, it's all, I think, Tata's like long-term built scouting network. And scouting network's probably an official way to put like all the friends he's made over the last 30 years by coaching in and around those leagues. He just texts them and says, hey, listen, who's like a right back in this league that could do a job for me, but maybe is out of favor with their club. Like, he just uses those connections to find these players. That, I think, is the single thing Tata has done best for this club, is identifying the players that are up and coming, like Diego Gómez, like Toto Aviles, like Facundo Farias, and then also finding these types of role players that can come in and fit perfectly, just like David Martínez. So a lot of credit for him, for Tata on that one. Anything else, or can I give my... No, your turn.
Thank you. You stole my award, and now you want to actually steal my award as well. All right, I see
I
how
can. Should I? Okay. So the next award, as I've muted him. No, sorry. Go ahead.
That's very rude of you, by the way. I will be
My
taking that
apologies.
to HR. And my next award is called the Knight's Gate Award. And this is not the Gate Gate, this is the Gate Gait. So there you go. Tell me who that is.
The Knight's Gate. Is it Diego Gómez?
No. Why do you
Is
think
it Drake Callender?
No.
Is it Robert Taylor?
Okay, you.
Is it David Ruiz?
Nope.
Is it Leo? Come on. Okay, tell me
No.
about this award.
So this award is, so how does a knight move, right? A knight moves in an L shape.
Right.
1, 2, 3. But a knight is also a very sophisticated, a very well thought out piece because it can jump over players. It can get into positions that other pieces cannot. And that for me is Jordi Alba with his L-shaped movement every time he takes the field. He runs down that left wing, he cuts back the ball, and it's always a goal. And that's exactly how he scored our third goal last time around, with Jordi Alba running down the left wing and cutting it back into Suárez. And he's just such a good player to watch, man. I feel, especially yesterday when I was watching the game, we were losing the midfield battle for a little bit, and it just felt like Alba was like, okay, hold up, I'm going to take control. I'm going to step in areas where I should. That one goal opportunity for Gressel where he tried to toe poke it through Chris Brady, Alba was the one who created that through the midfield. It just feels like he is everywhere. He can take positions that other players don't necessarily take up. He catches the game by the scruff of its neck and makes things happen when Inter Miami is struggling. But most importantly, he has those cut back L-shaped passes that always tend to lead to a goal. And once Lionel Messi is back, that's going to be a feature of Inter Miami's attack. And I am so excited for him to link up with Messi once he's back as well. But I thought he had a really good game yesterday. Overall, contributed very well and is just phenomenal, man. Great to have him on board.
Yeah, nothing to say about that, man. Jordi Alba was awesome. He is so fun to watch. He's so talented. He's one of those players where it's just like you kind of watch him every game and you get spoiled and salvaged, but then you just, especially on, when you rewatch the game, you look at how bad the other team's fullbacks are, and you're just like, this isn't fair. And in fact, I think Jordi Alba, the gap between Jordi Alba and the opposition fullbacks that we face it might be as big as any other position on our roster, even like our striker compared to their striker. I think Messi versus another team's winger is probably the only comparison because Jordi Alba is just it's that much better. It's that much of a difference between him and any other fullback.
And I think it's also he's really underrated because he doesn't get the same level of appreciation as Messi, Suárez, or Busquets. But I think he brings more to the team than sometimes the rest of them. He's always available, touch wood. He always finds ways to influence the game from dangerous positions as well. And just a phenomenal player, man. So I just wanted to talk about him for a bit. But
yeah, I got some stats to back it up. He's third on the team in goal contributions this year behind Messi and Suárez. 15 goal contributions, 4 goals, 11 assists. I remember last season he had about a 1 goal contribution every 3 games. It, to me, was like so impactful because if you can get a goal every 3 games from your fullback, that is just such an advantage. Now he's doing it every 2 games. Or I'm sorry, he's getting 2 every 3 games, rather. Even more impressive, right? 0.57 goal contribution per 90. So not quite 2 out of every 3 games, but almost. And to get that out of fullback, it's just insane. He's so good. And he deserves this award for sure.
All right, take us away, Scotty. Last one.
I'm giving the Mind Changer Award.
Of course, this award goes to somebody who has influenced our minds, and that's Federico Redondo, because I feel like you're finally coming to terms with how he is as a player.
Don't be silly. It goes to Julian.
Jeez.
It goes to Julian Gressel.
Okay.
No, I apologize. No, Redondo has had a number of solid games in a row, and I actually think this style that we played fits him and like suits him, and like puts him in the best position and sort of fits the team around him in the best way of anything we've seen so far. The mind changer award goes to Julian Gressel, who I thought had a number of really nice touches, especially in the first half in transition, where he didn't get any credit for any goal contributions. He could have had an assist on that Suárez header that hit off the post, but it was just a number of really smart touches that set up the next player for the next play. And that, I think, oftentimes gets undervalued because we just want to see the goals. We want to see the final actions, but putting the next player in the right position to succeed is crucial. And I thought he did that a number of times really well. And so I'm giving him an award, but also I wanted to talk about him on a more broad basis, because the last time we had Messi was in that game against St. Louis where we drew 3-3. And if you remember, that was the first time all season that he came off the bench. He had been playing in the midfield for much of the season, and we were every single pregame show talking about how Gressel's back in the midfield. Gressel's playing again. Gressel's back in the midfield. And when are we going to get Gressel a rest? When are we going to give Kramaski a chance? When are we going to give whoever an opportunity? How do we find the right fit for Julian Gressel? How do we find the right role for Julian Gressel? How do we help Julian succeed? And then finally, in that last game with Messi, he comes off the bench, he gets an assist, and then Messi and company leave for the Copa America. And he was incredible as a right winger for the next 8 games or whatever. And he found his role and he changed our mind. He went from a guy that we were thinking, we are really struggling to find a role for this guy. We can see the talent, but we're not using it appropriately, and we're forcing him into positions where he's not going to be successful because of who he is and who are the people around him. And he changed our mind about how good he is as a player, because we did find the right role and he blossomed. And for the first time in like 3 or 4 weeks, we saw him back on the right wing. And as I mentioned, I thought he had a number of really nice touches that set up the following actions. But Messi's coming back now. And so where does that leave Julian Gressel? And I wanted to give him an award so we could have this conversation, because I'm not sure it's in the starting lineup, even though he's been really, really good for a while now.
Yeah, I don't think you can move him back into the midfield. But first, coming back to this game in general, it's really interesting you said that, because I didn't notice it in the first viewing. So for you to mention that he had a really good impact in this game in his own understated way is very curious. And maybe I should go back and watch the highlights or something. But in the first viewing, I didn't actually notice him being that influential, or what you just mentioned. But yeah, I completely agree with you, man. He's first of all, very uninspired award name. I think you could have done better. Just saying.
Fair. That's fair.
He has definitely changed our minds, and for the better, man. He was in the trenches. He was in the trenches, down bad, and I didn't think there was any coming back for him. I thought he would eventually be run into the ground by Tata Martino, and he was losing the fans. Nobody wanted to see him in the starting 11, and every single pre-game show we would leave out and we would exhale out every time we saw him in the midfield. And then that one switch happened, and since then he's had 9 goal contributions, 9 assists, 1 goal in the MLS. He's been really, really good. I completely agree with you on the point that he helps this team in the transition phase so well. And you're right, his role on this team might be diminished once Messi comes back, but I think he's going to be a valuable asset off the bench. And he's really, really helpful.
We've even seen a couple times, starting with that St. Louis City game, that he is good at coming off the bench. And by the way, last year he was with Columbus in the second half of the season as they went on to win the MLS Cup, and he was coming off the bench for them. So maybe that's a recipe for winning the MLS Cup. I do feel bad because he's played well, man, but he has already kind of lost out on this right wing role to Matías Rojas over the last couple of weeks. I don't necessarily think that was the right decision, but it's kind of neither here nor there, because Messi's back, and he's certainly not better than Lionel Messi, and he would admit that one. So Yeah, I
I
just
don't think you can put him back in the midfield either because there are players who
agree.
are playing better than him in the midfield at this point in time. Redondo, I think, would be a first pick in the midfield. Sergio Busquets might get shifted back into the midfield. Yannick Bright should not be taken out of that midfield for God's sake, but I do think he might get sacrificed if Tata Martino wants to fit in Gressel. But that's a conversation that we can have for the midweek episode because I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, that is something we're going to talk about in the midweek episode. But yeah, so Julian Gressel gets my award. I thought, like you said, he had an understated but positive performance, and I didn't want that to go unrealized. There were a number of other performances I think are worth at least commenting on. Robert Taylor.
Can I take that on? First player I want to talk about, and I'll just mention a statistic and not say anything about him again. Yannick Bright had 39 passes tried yesterday. Guess how many completed passes he had?
34.
38. He had a 97% pass accuracy yesterday, just one misplaced pass, and that was noticeable. Yeah, I mentioned in the reaction yesterday that it felt like, and I texted you on the sides as well, that Yannick Bright was trying passes yesterday that we haven't seen from him, and that looked good. There were a few that didn't come off, but I thought he had a really good game on the ball. Off the ball, he was just, as usual, amazing, but on the ball, I thought he was much better than we've seen him previously.
Well, apparently they did come off because he had
exactly, yeah,
completion. But yeah, I think we've seen enough. Here's the thing: we've seen enough of Yannick Bright pushing the ball forward that we know he can do it, and so it's just a matter of like, listen, he's 22. He's going to continue to get better. He's going to continue to gain more confidence, and so that part of his game is going to continue to get better and better and come along. And so, yeah, the sky's the limit for him, man. But you know, it is good to notice it as it comes, right? And I use this month-over-month analogy with Totavius all the time, but I think it's the same with Yannick Bright, man. He gets better month after month.
Yeah.
Robert Taylor finally comes in the 91st minute and then scores on his second touch. I think the first touch he has just sets up the play, and then he runs around, beats Carlos Teodon, gets the slam between the legs for Chris Brady for a goal. That felt good for not just Robert Taylor, but for all the fans. Probably the fans more because Robert Taylor got crunched on the after part of that play. Leo Campana, a really nice setup. I mean, it is, I think, easy to mess that pass up, especially with your off foot, if you are, you know, caught halfway between should I shoot, should I pass, if you're not convicted, and especially if you're fresh into the game, although he had been on for about 10 minutes. So good pass from Campana. He gets back into the goal contribution list, and he's going to feel positive about his minutes on the pitch. Kremaski and David Ruiz, I thought also came in and were solid. David Ruiz started that play, or at least was a major part of that play. So I thought all four substitutes played well. Again, I could have seen all of them earlier, especially Leo Campana. I think Campana probably should have come on for Suárez when Kremaski and David Ruiz came on, because at that point in the game, we were going to a back five with like a 5-4-1 where we were no longer going to be trying to be threatening offensively. And I don't know if you really needed Suárez for that. But Diego Gómez, I thought was excellent. He would have been my last award. Again, a poor name, but I would have given him the Heron That Flew East because I wasn't particularly creative today. Redondo, we mentioned, he was solid. I think he's been improving. Drake Callender, we mentioned this last episode, but I think he's become a little bit more aggressive on coming out for those balls. And I thought, again, especially when you watch it the second time, you saw that another game where he was doing that again, and that was good to see. And then lastly, Cello Wiegand, who I thought was fine. He's back to being fine, which is, you know, that's what I want from him if he's out there.
Exactly. And I think one last point to put this all together, we're peaking at the right time and everyone's coming back into form at the right time, which is going to be really good. I know we still have 7 games left before the playoffs, but 7 games feels like a lot, but it's not really. And playoffs are going to be upon us very soon. So we want to get everyone as many minutes and as good in form as we can. And by that, I mean Robert Taylor, Campana, Kremaski, Ruiz. We want to get them as much game time and as much minutes in their legs as well. So they all contributed really well yesterday.
Yeah, I think you make an interesting point, and I'll just clarify this. We have 7 games left, but they are going to come in quick succession. We have 2 weeks off before that Philadelphia game, which is 2 Saturday, not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday. And then we play the midweek and the following weekend. So we play 3 games in 1 week. Then we get the 6 days off until the following Saturday. And then once again, 3 games in 1 week, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. And then our final game is after the October international break. We play 1 game and then the playoffs start so that we have a chance to get one last in-form regular season game before we have to play in the playoffs. But it is going to feel very quick. We get the next 2 weeks off, but then it's going to be 6 games in 3 weeks, and it's going to feel hot and heavy for anyone, and especially for us that are doing, the pregame show and all that stuff. And so it's going to be exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. Guys, we will be back for a midweek episode. We've been teasing it all weekend, really, but we're going to talk about what this team needs to do when we get Messi back. We're going to talk about how they integrate him, what Tata should do, what players you should surround him by, what is the best tactical setup. That's going to be the nature of this conversation, and it will be the midweek episode, maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday, to be determined. But until then, I'm Scotty. This is Saur. We will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful week and enjoy having a team at the top of the table, because a lot of Inter Miami fans haven't been able to have that for a long time. And so it's really nice. See you guys next time.